She was a powerhouse of creation, but unlike the other eons, Sophia was different. She didn't want to play by the rules. And what I mean by that is that in this perfect realm, all the eons created in pairs. They maintained perfect balance, and Sophia, well, she wanted to create something on her own. Well, this is where everything falls apart, because she acted in a way that was imbalanced, and so what she created wasn't harmonious like the others. No, this wasn't a shining light or beautiful idea. What she created was shadow. A malformed, chaotic force. And this was kind of like a divine glitch in the Matrix, a cosmic mistake that couldn't be undone. But this shadow wasn't just some harmless byproduct. It was a living, breathing force of chaos. It was an anomaly, a being of darkness that couldn't harmonize with the eternal realms of light. Now, for the first time, reality wasn't unified. This shadow introduced conflict, division, imbalance, and a chain reaction that would ripple through everything. But here's the worst part. This shadow, it didn't just sit there, it wanted power. So from this shadow would come the self-proclaimed god of the material world, a being that was so arrogant, so envious, and so blinded by its own arrogance that it would dare to declare itself the one true god. And this is where things really take a turn here, because Sophia, the divine being of wisdom, she acts without permission, creates a shadow, and then from that shadow, a being known as Yaldabaoth is born. Now, the Gnostics describe Yaldabaoth as having the body of a dragon, the head of a lion, with eyes that flash like lightning bolts. Now, Yaldabaoth isn't totally aware of the realms of light, but he can sense that there's something out there greater than him, and so he gets jealous. He looks around at the void and sees nothing but himself, and so declares, "I am God, and there is no other." Now, if this sounds familiar, it should, because that's what God says in the Bible all the time. A lot. Sounds to me like someone needs a therapy session. Now, this is where the Gnostics would say that Yaldabaoth goes horribly wrong. Declaring himself the one true God, that was a big mistake. In the Gnostic view, this isn't an act of power, it's sin. Because according to them, we're all divine. We'll get to that in a moment. But every one of us is a fragment of the eternal light. So for one being to say, "I'm the only God, worship me," is essentially the worst sin possible, because it denies the divinity of everything else. On The Origin of the World says, "And when he said this, he sinned against all the immortal beings." In other words, congratulations, you're the first one to commit blasphemy. So what does Yaldabaoth do with his newfound delusion of grandeur? Well, he decides to create, and he takes the formless chaos around him, matter without spirit, and shapes it into heaven and earth. But this isn't some grand, benevolent act of creation like how it's described in the Bible. This is a being trying to make a throne for itself. Now, Yaldabaoth doesn't stop at creating heaven. He decides to make some offspring, because every self-proclaimed god needs minions and henchmen, right? And so get this, he names them, it's kind of weird, by the sounds they make as they're born. So when one of them goes E, Yaldabaoth decides, great, your name is Iao. And his second son says, eh, and he gets named Eloi. And the third, he makes a sound like ass. Hey, I didn't write this. So naturally, he's called Astapheos. I mean, you really can't make this up. Now, there was another son whose name was Sabaoth, and he's extremely important, so we'll get back to him in a minute. But altogether, these beings of darkness form what are known as the Seven Archons, and they're not exactly the Justice League. Archon literally means ruler, and they're described as androgynous, embodying both masculine and feminine traits. Now, this is a theme that you're going to see a lot in Gnosticism, the unification of opposites. But don't let that fool you into thinking that these are some balanced, enlightened beings. No, these are the architects, the rulers of chaos. So, while these beings are inherently chaotic and destructive, they're also modeled after the divine pattern from the higher realms. It's kind of like someone took a perfect blueprint and made a distorted, glitchy version. They're powerful, sure, but they're not divine. See, On the Origin of the World flips everything on its head. Heaven and earth aren't divine creations, but malformed prisons made by a delusional being. And the angels? Not divine beings, but archons, rulers of chaos. Even Yaldabaoth, this supposed God, is revealed to be blind, arrogant, and totally unaware of the higher realms of light. It's no wonder the church didn't want this narrative floating around. See, the Gnostics weren't just spinning wild tales for the sake of it. These stories are metaphors for the human condition and for the struggles that we face in understanding who we really are. So as we peel back the layers of this story, you're going to see how it's actually transmitting a deep secret about your true self. What is that secret? We'll get to that. But first, what if the real war in heaven wasn't about Lucifer rebelling against God out of pride, but something else entirely? Let's talk about Sabaoth. Now he's interesting. This is Yaldabaoth's son. So Yaldabaoth, the god of the Bible, just got done creating the heavens and the earth and the angels, or archons, and there's Sabaoth just hanging out in Yaldabaoth's do-it-yourself chaos-fueled universe, but he hears something that changes everything. See, Yaldabaoth is there in the middle of this creation, and he's getting a kick out of all the angels worshiping him. And so what does he do? Well, the usual. He tells him that he's the only God. The text says, "And he was honored by all the army of angels. He was delighted and continually boasted, saying to them, 'It is I who am God, and there is no other.'" But guess what happened? His mommy heard him, and she was pissed. The text says, "When Sophia saw the impiety of the chief ruler, she was filled with anger. She was invisible. She said, 'You are mistaken, Samael,' that is, blind God." So being called Samael is like being called by your full name when your mom's pissed. She was calling him blind and ignorant. But guess who heard her? Sabaoth. So Sophia's basically like, "Hey kid, your dad's a fraud," and Sabaoth actually gets it. He sees through all the lies and the chaos, and it's kind of like when someone finally realizes that they're in a pyramid scheme or some weird cult. Sabaoth actually praises Sophia. And so in response, Sophia gives him some of the power of the realms of light. How cool is this story? He suddenly becomes illuminated. And the text says that because of this new power, he's now called the Lord of Armies. Now, this is pretty much an act of cosmic mutiny, and this starts a great war in Yaldabaoth's heavens. Now, you'll notice that sounds a lot like the revolt of Lucifer, but unlike the Christian version here, the Lucifer figure is the hero, and God is the villain. See, Sabaoth isn't some prideful, power-hungry bad guy trying to overthrow God. He's more like the rebellious kid who finally realizes, hold on a second, my dad's actually an abusive control freak who lies to everyone. I don't need to stick around for this bullshit. Now, here's where things take an unexpectedly romantic turn. So Sophia doesn't just give Sabaoth divine light and call it a day, she also introduces him to her daughter, Zoe, whose name literally means life. And let's just say Sabaoth falls hard. So together, Sabaoth and Zoe form a cosmic power couple, and she teaches him about the higher realms. With his newfound power and knowledge, Sabaoth creates a mansion that's 7 times better than any of the heavens Yaldabaoth could make. This is like the ultimate moving out of your parents' basement story, and Yaldabaoth is pissed and terrified. His own son, the one he thought he controlled, turned against him, aligned with Sophia and Zoe, and now has a realm that's more incredible than anything he could ever make. But Yaldabaoth is about to strike back. How? With death itself. Let me explain. And by the way, if you've made it this far, congrats, you're in deep now. And if you want to see how deep this rabbit hole goes, then like and subscribe, because there's a lot more to check out, and also check out my books in the description of this video before the Archons censor it. So let's set the stage here. Sabaoth, Yaldabaoth's rebellious son, has just pieced out, ditched his dad's chaotic, matter-filled kingdom, and joined Team Sophia in the higher realms of light. He's shining with wisdom, he's got Zoe as his partner, and he's building a realm that puts Yaldabaoth's crappy creation to shame. And Yaldabaoth is not happy. This guy cannot handle rejection. So what does he do? He creates death. Now, do you actually see how cool the metaphor of balance here? His son runs off with Zoe, who is life, so Yaldabaoth creates death. I mean, it's a dick move, he's basically trolling, but you gotta admit the theme of balance of life and death is really beautiful. But wait, it gets better here, because death, according to the Gnostic text, is an androgynous being, because of course it is. This is Gnosticism, where duality is everywhere. And this androgynous death doesn't just stop at existing, it gets busy. It mixes with its own nature, if you know what I mean, and spawns 7 offspring who are also androgynous. So each of these 7 have both a male and female name. These aren't just any kids though. Meet the worst family ever. The male offspring of death are envy, wrath, weeping, sighing, mourning, lamenting, and groaning. And the female offspring of death are lust, grief, bitterness, cursing, sighing, again, because apparently death needs extra sighing, I don't know, quarrelsomeness. And these are all the archonic forces. These are the spiritual shackles that keep humanity enslaved. But, and this is the beautiful part, Gnosticism also teaches that death isn't the end, it's just another layer of the illusion. You see, Yaldabaoth wasn't just insecure, he was terrified, and somewhere deep down, even this false god had a suspicion that something greater than him did exist before him, and that haunted him. So what did he decide to do? He decided to test the universe. On The Origin of the World describes this, and Yaldabaoth says, "If anything has existed before me,